Hi everyone, welcome to With Care. I'm Care and I'm here today with Laroux Peoples.
Hi.
Laroux is an awesome local lawyer who focuses on family planning, wills and powers of attorney, and today we're going to chat about some of the common questions that I've had before, that parents have asked me about preparing for their estate and their long-term planning with their little one. So welcome Laroux, so nice to have you.
Thank you. It's so great to be in your beautiful home.
Awesome, well, thanks for being here. Often I talk about wills and powers of attorney and planning for the estate in my CPR and safety classes, which I know sounds a little bit morbid, but it's so important that families are prepared for anything that could come up. And often I find that families reply to me with things like, oh, I don't need a will because we really don't have valuables or any extra money to give to anyone. But it's really important to note that wills and powers of attorney are not about who is going to get your belongings. So, Laroux, do you want to tell us a little bit about why a will and a power of attorney is so important?
Absolutely. I think the thing you really have to keep track of is it's not about the assets. It's exactly what you're saying. It's about our children. And you really want to be in control of if something, my goodness, something happened to both of you, who would be responsible for raising the kids. So that's really the most important part is picking guardianship for sure. And really, you don't have to have much else in order to have that desire to get that done.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Once you become a parent, you need to think about that long-term planning for, just in case something happens. And of course, we hope it doesn't, and for most of us it won't, but it's always best to be prepared.
For sure.
Great.
Yeah.
So another thing I get a lot of questions about, though, is what's the difference between a will and a power of attorney? Some of my clients have said, I've got a will taken care of. They maybe found one online that they did, which I don't usually recommend.
Right.
But they often don't have a power of attorney done. And in some cases, a power of attorney is more important. So...
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really, this is an issue we're seeing more and more. Of course, I'm also concerned about not just your clients, but their parents. We get into situations where that was the same thing. They always had a will, but they never had power of attorney. And these are the documents, in the event you're unable to make your own financial decisions, or if you're unable to make your own healthcare decisions, you need to be able to appoint someone to do that. And we have had cases where if that doesn't happen and then the person becomes incapable, it's a real mess for the family. They have to spend a lot of money with lawyers and go through a lot of headache, and it's a lot of turmoil in a bad time, otherwise bad time. So we really encourage people to get those done at the same time.
Yeah, that's such an important point. So basically, this planning ahead of time could save you not only stress, but money long term.
100%.
Yeah. So again, those powers of attorney focusing on your financial decisions, and then there's a separate one for your health and medical related decisions.
That's correct.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So really important you're thinking about, who would take on those responsibilities. And often the initial power of attorney is our spouse.
That's right.
But then what happens if both our spouse and I are incapable or something comes up beyond that?
Exactly. And usually, when we get into decisions about the will and who might administer an estate, if something happens to both parents, it's often a natural choice to make that person the person that might manage the finances if both parents were alive but unable to manage their finances. It's often, we usually do the same people. So.
Okay, awesome. So that makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah. So less decisions to make, but there's also lots of different options too. So
yeah. And when we're talking about doing like a typical will and power of attorney for a couple or for a family, like how much time are we talking? Is this something that can be done, in one day? Is this something that takes a few weeks? How much planning do we need to put into this?
Right. So my favorite thing is I'll get a phone call and the parents are like, we're going on a kid-free trip. And it's
They're leaving their children for the first time and suddenly they're like, oh, we need a plan.
Exactly.
So maybe not the night before you leave on that flight?
Please.
Yes.
Yeah. Usually we need a little more notice than that.
So maybe when you book the trip, then call Laroux. Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And all of Laroux's information will be down below. There'll be a link provided, so you can always check out all this information later. Parents are coming to you, Laroux, and they're planning to get a will and power of attorney done. They've contacted you. What kind of preparation do they need to do? Like, what do they have to have in advance or kind of know or think about maybe together as a couple prior to going into that process?
No, so that's an excellent question. So people are usually nervous that they need to have a whole bunch of things settled on or dealt with really what I ask is that, if you do end up going ahead with me, that you do look into all the assets that you have. And, I ask for names of family members and things like that. So it's usually things you can pull together relatively easily.
So pretty simple stuff that you'd know. Yeah.
Exactly. And you don't have to be set on who's the guardian. That's always a hard conversation for people. So sometimes
Yes, that was the hardest for me and my partner. And even now that we're 3 kids in, the people who we assigned as guardian initially when we had 1 child might not be appropriate now because they've got 3 of their own kids, and 6 kids is a lot of kids. Again, we need to maybe rethink and chat with you about editing and changing our wills and changing that.
For sure. Yeah. And I always say with families, if you start this process and you've done it with me once before, and I've had people whose family's grown, or perhaps the guardianship situation has changed, there's always ways that we can change the documents without making it a huge additional cost for families.
Oh, that's great.
So that's
really good to know.
Yeah, no need to be concerned. If we've done it together once, then we can make those changes pretty simply.
Awesome. I mentioned before that I've had quite a few clients talk to me about, will forms that they found online, things they've bought from Staples, from Business Depot or something like that, and they want to kind of do on their own. But I know from my own experience that I've heard it is very much recommended to go with a proper lawyer who focuses in this. So I want to hear your opinion on that. What's the reason to have a lawyer versus just, whipping up something online and having your partner sign it and getting a witness?
Right, and calling it a day, yeah. So 100%, it's just the whole idea behind having a lawyer is it is insurance for the families. It is actually insurance for your children. If the lawyer makes a mistake in the documents and something really goes south, the lawyer can be sued. This is the guarantee that families have. If you take something off the internet, if you buy that will kit at Staples, you are preparing your own product. There is nobody you can turn to if there's a mistake. So.
Yeah, so the legal ramifications long term, it's worth having that insurance. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thanks so much for joining me today, Laroux. I think this information is going to be really helpful for a lot of the families watching so they can prepare for their future estates.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
Awesome. So if you'd like to get more information, please check out Laroux's website, www.peopleslaw.ca. There will be a link below, so you can always check that out. And you can get a free telephone consultation with Laroux. So make sure you sign up now. Then you can get all your questions answered and figure out where to go from here. Don't forget to mention with care to receive a discount. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.